In June 2025, the Middle East's uneasy calm was shattered in a single night as the world watched in disbelief. The region, long marked by tension and fragile truces, was suddenly thrust into chaos. Israel launched a sweeping and meticulously coordinated military assault on Iran, citing what it called an imminent nuclear threat. The operation, planned in utmost secrecy, involved dozens of aircraft and precision-guided munitions, targeting key sites deep within Iranian territory. Israeli and U.S. forces struck Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, aiming to cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions for years to come. The attacks left behind smoldering ruins and sent shockwaves through the international community. The strikes were devastating, causing widespread destruction and sparking global alarm. World leaders condemned the operation for violating Iran's sovereignty, while emergency meetings were called at the United Nations to address the rapidly escalating crisis. Iran reported over 1,000 casualties, with hospitals overwhelmed by the wounded. The destruction fueled national outrage, uniting Iranians across political divides in a surge of anger and defiance against foreign aggression. The United States, standing firmly with Israel, joined the offensive, escalating the conflict into a full-blown international crisis. Diplomatic channels buzzed with urgent messages, but the region now teetered on the edge of a much wider war. Airspace over the Middle East became a tense and deadly battleground, with fighter jets clashing and anti-aircraft missiles lighting up the night sky. The risk of miscalculation or accidental escalation grew by the hour, threatening to draw in more nations. The war, lasting 12 days, began with a calculated strike but quickly spiraled beyond anyone's control. As cities emptied and infrastructure lay in ruins, the world faced a terrifying new era of uncertainty. The stage was set for a conflict that would redraw the region's alliances, reshape global politics, and leave a lasting mark on the world's collective memory. Iran's response was immediate and fierce, sending shockwaves through the region and the world. Within hours of the initial provocation, Tehran's leadership convened in an emergency session, determined to demonstrate their resolve. The Revolutionary Guard unleashed a staggering barrage, over 500 ballistic missiles, targeting Israeli military and strategic sites over the course of 12 tense days. The night skies above the Middle East lit up with the fiery trails of missiles, a display of power not seen in decades. Israeli cities, long considered safe behind layers of advanced missile defenses, now faced relentless and unpredictable barrages. The Iron Dome system intercepted many incoming threats, but the sheer volume overwhelmed defenses at times, allowing some missiles to strike military bases, infrastructure, and even densely populated urban centers. 28 Israelis lost their lives in the attacks, and hundreds more were injured. The psychological impact was profound. Families huddled in shelters, children traumatized, and the nation's sense of security was shattered almost overnight. This conflict marked a new era of state-on-state warfare in the region, one fought not with tanks and ground troops but with long-range missiles and advanced technology. The rules of engagement had changed, and so had the stakes. Each Iranian missile carried a message: defiance, resilience, and a warning to adversaries. Iran made it clear to the world that it would not be cowed or intimidated, no matter the cost. The cycle of attack and retaliation threatened to spiral out of control, drawing in regional and global powers. Only intense U.S.-brokered diplomacy managed to halt the escalation, forcing a fragile ceasefire on June 24. The war left deep scars on both sides, devastated infrastructure in Iran, shaken confidence and battered cities in Israel, and a region left reeling from the violence. The cost in human suffering and material loss was immense. As the dust settled, the region was left to reckon with the aftermath. Civilians, leaders, and the international community braced for what might come next, knowing that the underlying tensions remained unresolved. The uneasy ceasefire did little to resolve the deep-rooted hostilities. The world watched anxiously, aware that peace in the Middle East remained as fragile as ever. The ceasefire's aftermath sent shockwaves through the corridors of global diplomacy, triggering what many described as a diplomatic earthquake. The world's attention shifted rapidly to the Middle East, where a new chapter in international relations was about to unfold. On July 9th, in a move that stunned analysts and diplomats alike, 20 Muslim-majority nations, including regional heavyweights like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, issued a rare and forceful joint condemnation of the Israeli and American strikes. This was not just another statement, it was a unified voice echoing across continents. Setting aside decades of old rivalries and deep-seated political differences, these nations declared the attacks a grave violation of international law. They demanded not only an immediate, unconditional ceasefire, but also accountability for those responsible, signaling a new level of resolve. Perhaps most astonishing was Saudi Arabia's gesture toward Iran. Long considered bitter rivals, the Saudis publicly referred to Iran as a brother nation. This unexpected language marked a dramatic shift in regional rhetoric and hinted at a possible thaw in one of the Middle East's most enduring rivalries. The sudden unity among Muslim nations left Israel and the United States increasingly isolated on the world stage. Their actions, intended to assert dominance, had instead forged a powerful coalition of opposition that neither had anticipated. The joint statement was more than symbolic. It sent ripples through the diplomatic landscape, challenging the old order and forcing governments worldwide to reconsider their positions. The Muslim world's unprecedented solidarity marked a true turning point, compelling a re-evaluation of alliances and strategies across the entire region. For many, it was a moment of hope, but for others, a sign of deepening divides. The conflict had redrawn not just military lines, but the very architecture of Middle Eastern diplomacy, setting the stage for a new era of cooperation and confrontation. As the world watched, new alliances began to take shape, and the future of the region and perhaps the world hung in the balance. The Muslim bloc's next move was bold, a call for a nuclear-free Middle East, directly challenging Israel's policy of nuclear ambiguity. For decades, Israel has neither confirmed nor denied its nuclear arsenal, remaining outside the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now the coalition demanded parity. No more exceptions, no more secret stockpiles. The timing was strategic, framing Israel's actions as hypocritical and putting it on the defensive in global forums. The demand gained traction worldwide, linking any future talks on Iran's program to Israel's own arsenal. The conversation about nuclear weapons in the Middle East had fundamentally changed, and Israel faced unprecedented scrutiny. The region's nuclear debate would never be the same. As Iran reeled from the attacks, it found diplomatic lifeline in the BRICS Forum, now expanded to include Iran. On July 6th, the 11-nation bloc, including China, Russia, India, and Brazil, condemned the strikes and expressed concern over attacks on civilian infrastructure. The statement positioned BRICS as defenders of international law, contrasting Western military action with calls for restraint. For Iran, this was a crucial political victory, showing it was not isolated and highlighting the shifting global balance of power. Even U.S. partners like India and Brazil joined the condemnation, signaling waning support for unilateral military action. The BRICS backing gave Iran leverage in future negotiations and amplified its narrative on the world stage. Diplomatic victories, it seemed, could be as vital as military ones. Despite public support, Russia and China kept their distance from the conflict, offering no military aid to Iran. Moscow's support was limited to statements, no advanced weapons or intelligence were sent, and Iran's outreach to Azerbaijan even drew Russian suspicion. China, focused on economic stability, condemned the strikes but avoided deeper involvement, unwilling to risk its interests in the region. This left Iran feeling exposed, realizing its alliances with Moscow and Beijing were more pragmatic than reliable. The war forced Tehran to confront the limits of its partnerships and rethink its foreign policy. Iran's leadership understood it could not count on great power backing in a crisis. The search for new, more dependable alliances began in earnest. The lesson was clear. In the end, Iran might have to stand alone. With Russia and China keeping their distance, Iran pivoted toward building alliances within the Muslim world. President Pezeshkian's attendance at the Economic Cooperation Organization Summit in Azerbaijan signaled a new strategy: closer ties with Turkey, Pakistan, and other non-Arab Muslim states. These nations condemned the attacks and called for regional solidarity, offering Iran a new axis of support. The pivot wasn't without risks. Moscow was displeased, but the potential for a more reliable coalition outweighed the dangers. Meanwhile, the war triggered a humanitarian crisis, with 250,000 Afghan refugees fleeing Iran's instability. Iran's new alliances offered hope for security, but also brought new challenges and responsibilities. The region's future would depend on how these relationships evolved. The June 2025 war became a catalyst, upending the Middle East's old alliances and forging unexpected new ones. The rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran faded, replaced by a fragile sense of Muslim solidarity in the face of external threats. Israel and the US found themselves more isolated, their actions having united much of the region against them. The call for a nuclear-free Middle East and BRICS support for Iran signaled a shift in global power dynamics. Iran's pivot to Turkey and Pakistan hinted at a new axis less dependent on global superpowers. The region was moving toward a multipolar order, with local powers shaping their own security. The legacy of the war was clear. Old fault lines had blurred, and the path to stability was more complex than ever. The Middle East's alliances had shifted, and the world would have to adapt to a new reality.